Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at Revell's 1/48 scale A-18E Super Hornet. This is going to be done in Maverick scheme, so let's go ahead and get into it. I hope you enjoy. So, starting off in the cockpit for this one, here you can see me painting up the main instrument panel using a USAF light gray. The majority, or I shouldn't say the majority, the cockpit itself is painted up in this USAF light gray. A little bit wrong. It feels like using a United States Air Force color on a naval aircraft, but the color matches pretty well, so, you know, it is what it is. Here you can see me painting up the main tub in that light gray, and you can see the consoles were masked off so that they can stay black. Here I am taking the masking tape off now to reveal the nice crisp black panels. Looks very, very good. So, moving on now, here you can see I'm using a Vallejo model color olive green to paint up the cushion for the ejection seat, and then you can see the harnesses there were painted up in that same USAF light gray. Here I am now inserting the flight stick and the main instrument panel into the cockpit tub. Everything went together very, very well. You can see there on the sidewalls I used the decals, the kit included decals, instead of hand painting them. Hand painting a cockpit is definitely a very important skill to have as a modeler, but if there is an option to use decals in the cockpit, I usually will, just because it looks a lot more accurate compared to what I can do with my brush. Here's the ejection seat going in now. The sides of it were just painted up using a smoke black color and gave it a white dry brush. Looks pretty good in there. Overall, this was an excellent looking cockpit, especially for a Revell kit. I've built a few Revell kits in the past, and the cockpits were kind of lackluster, to say the least. But the newer Revell stuff is actually really good, which I'm really happy about. So, pushing forward with the rest of the build now, here you can see me cementing a part of the spine and the back of the cockpit onto the top half of the fuselage section. Here you can see me test fitting the two fuselage halves together after the cockpit tub was glued in place up there. The fit overall was pretty good. Two spots needed a bit of tape to hold it in place, but overall it was pretty good. Here you can see a little bit of, I guess, bracing for lack of a better word, kind of a holder. And the horizontal stabilizers have really, really big locating pins. They're probably about 1.5 inches, 2 inches long on either one, and they slide into that. And that way you get the correct angle on both of them, if that makes sense. So when you move one, the other moves. It looks awesome. Allows you to get the correct angle without having to worry about glue. It's fantastic. Moving on to a subassembly now. Here you can see me putting together the two halves of the nose of the aircraft. Pretty straightforward process here. A little bit of tape was needed to hold them in place while the glue dried. Here you can see that all dried up. Looks really, really good. I'm just going to say it right now. I really enjoyed this kit, which is surprising for a few reasons. One, it's a Revell kit that was originally tooled in 2005. It was just reboxed for the movie. But it's an excellent kit, and this kit actually means a lot to me because this was actually the very first kit that I ever built many years ago now, back in 2020. And then I built it 2 more times after that, and they all came out looking horrible. The first 3 times I built it, they all looked horrible, so I'm really happy to say that I am really happy with how this one came out. I think the weathering and everything looks very authentic on the end of the build, and I'm really, really happy with how it came out. But anyway, back onto the build now. There you can see the nose was cemented onto the fuselage. And here I am cementing the wingtips in place. Because the F-18 is a carrier-based fighter, the wingtips have the ability to fold to save space on the carrier deck and in the carrier hangar under the deck. Pretty cool stuff. So here I am cementing the other wingtip in. This is a pretty straightforward process with a nice big locating pin to make sure that you have it in the right spot. Quite a bit of glue was needed to keep them in place, but at the end of the day we got there. Here you can see me cementing the HUD in place. I didn't end up painting the sides of this just because there was no real proper place to put the paint, so it would have just got all over the place. Here you could see the canopies, or the canopy and the windshield were already painted up and masked off, and that's because those were the canopy parts from the third time that I built the kit just a few days ago. The third time that I built the kit was actually supposed to be this video, but I ended up completely destroying that model. That's a story that I won't get into, but I just took the canopy from that kit and put it onto this one just to save myself a bit of masking and a bit of time. So, sorry for that little spew of emotion. But moving on back to the kit, here you can see the whole kit was given a coating of black primer. This is the Vallejo black primer. And now I'm going to be doing a black basing technique. Black basing is basically where you have highly concentrated areas of the paint color that you're using in the middle of panels. That way when you go back over with your uniform coating, the areas that don't have paint are going to show up more shaded and darker, which just accentuates the panel lines and things like that. That technique is definitely a staple on the channel. I use it quite a bit on my builds. In pretty much every video, I've used it at least once, whether it be in the cockpit, on the aircraft, or both. I just love the technique. It looks fantastic. So, as long as it works for me, I'm going to keep using it. But anyway, catching up with the build, here you can see me using said black basing technique all over the lower surfaces of the aircraft. I'm using the USAF light gray again, because this was a fairly good match to the color for the bottom half of the Super Hornet. So here what I'm doing is using a US Desert Sand color. It's the Vallejo Model Air US Desert Sand. And I'm using this color on the lower surfaces of the aircraft toward the back by the tailhook, where the engines are, just because naturally that area would get a little bit hotter because of the burner cans and everything like that. So these areas here would have a few different colors in them because of the heat weathering. So I wanted to recreate this just slightly with I use an intermediate blue and this brown color just to add a few different shades to the whole kind of hot section. It's not really a hot section, but just the area next to the engine. I do this on the top surfaces as well, as you can see here. Here I'm using that blue color, the intermediate blue, and just spraying it all over the panels where I think the heat would affect it the most. This whole effect pretty much gets completely drowned out when I do my oil work that you'll see later in the video. Really, really proud of how that came out. It's my first time using oils to that extent on an aircraft model, and I'm really happy with how it came out. It looks awesome. But anyway, yeah, it pretty much gets completely drowned out, so, you know, it is what it is. Just finishing up with the last bit of paint now. Here you can see on the left side, I guess, the actual right engine, but on the left side of the screen more so. It shows up a little more because it's all blended in. And here you can see the upper surfaces have had that same black basing technique done to them as well. And then we'll go over the top surfaces with our uniform coating, the same as the bottom. Here you can see me going over the top with said uniform coating. Pretty straightforward process here. The video is sped up, don't worry, I do take my time with my painting. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward process. It's just a uniform coating, building up thin layers. I think I used 3 fairly thin layers. That way I don't drown out that black basing technique that I had before. And here you can see all of that paint finished up. Here you can see we have the spine of the mighty Super Hornet masked off. Maverick's Hornet very famously had a black spine, so just going to paint that up using the primer color because I'm currently out of black paint. A little bit embarrassing, but it is what it is. Here you can see me taking that masking tape off now to reveal some nice crisp lines. Really, really happy with how the spine came out. The black looks really, really good against that USAF medium gray. Speaking of that medium gray, I think it might have been a little bit too dark, because if you look at reference pictures of the Super Hornet, the upper surface color and the lower surface color are basically impossible to tell apart. They're just such a similar color, and on my model you can see the colors differentiate fairly drastically, but the colors still look good either way, so that's all I care about. You can see now I have the radome masked off. This is going to get sprayed in a different kind of a shade of a gray. There you can see me showing you that there. It's just a bit of the medium gray with a few drops of the light gray and brown. There you can see that finished up there. So, on many pictures of Super Hornets, you'll notice around these little areas here that I'm spraying up, there's kind of lighter patches of paint. And this was from the ground crew's efforts to try and repair the paint because of the salt corrosion and the salt weathering. And I thought this was really cool, and I really wanted to recreate it. So all I did was I mixed up a little bit of that USAF light gray with a few drops of white and sprayed it on there like so. Then I covered them up with some masking fluid, sprayed over it with the regular USAF light gray, and then rubbed the masking fluid off to reveal the little splotches and kind of paint tears, and I think it looks really cool. Here I am now spraying up the corners of some of the panels. Here you can see me spraying up the corners of the flaps with a lighter mixture of the USAF medium gray, and I'm going to be covering this with masking fluid as well to give the effect that the ground crews have been trying to repair the paint in the corners of panels, and it's been kind of getting torn up and beaten up by the salt water and the winds of the ocean and things like that. And on the finished build, I think it looks pretty authentic. It's pretty cool. On the radome, I sprayed up a lighter mixture of the radome color, just with a bit of gray and brown, just a lighter mixture of what was already done for the radome, and sprayed it on in little squares to show that maybe the ground crew had painted over some little spots that had some corrosion. Here you can see me applying the masking tape with the back of an old, applying the masking fluid, sorry, not the masking tape, with the back of an old brush, and once that's dry, we'll go over it with our regular medium gray coating, and then we'll peel it all up to reveal the old paint underneath it. Here I am peeling up that masking fluid now to reveal that effect. I think it looks pretty good. I'm happy with how it came out, so that's all that really matters in my book. And here you can see it being done on the upper surfaces as well. Pretty straightforward process, just using your thumb to kind of wipe it away, but being careful not to rip up any other paint with it. But yeah, overall, it's a headache-free and a stress-free part of the build, and it looks very good. Here you can see the wheel wells were masked off and painted. I didn't paint them at first and then mask them off after when I was going to paint the fuselage, just because it would have been a little bit more difficult to mask them off. Just trying to get around all those little spikes and triangles and curves and things like that, so I just decided to leave them as primer color and spray them up after the fact, and it turned out to be a lot easier. On screen now, you can see me putting a wash on the aircraft. This is the Brown Grime for Winter Vehicles by AK. Fantastic color, looks very good, and it makes the aircraft that I make look very dirty, which is exactly what I'm going for. If any of you guys watching are familiar with the Super Hornet and Hornets in general, you know that these birds get very dirty, particularly on the top with oil streaking and stains from leaks and different things like that. So I just really wanted this aircraft to be dirty. I know Maverick's F-18 in the movie wasn't very dirty, but just for realism's sake, in the sense of being able to weather the aircraft, maybe we'll say that this is following the events of Top Gun Maverick, and this aircraft is now on a regular cruise, and it's gotten dirty because of the training missions that it's done. So, just going to cover the entirety of the top surfaces of the aircraft in this color. We'll do the same for the bottom after, and here you can see what it looks like. Here it is all wiped off, and I think it looks pretty good. Definitely could have been better, but I mean, I painted it over the entire surface of the aircraft, so it's about as good as it's going to get. Here you can see it's on the bottom surface as well too. Made the aircraft look very dirty, which is exactly what I was going for. So, moving on to the second stage and the final stage of weathering for this aircraft, and that is going to be some oil work. Here you can see I'm painting a layer of mineral spirits, or white spirits, as you call them. Painting that over the area that I'm going to be working on with the oils. And basically all I'm going to be doing is dabbing the oils along the panel lines and then slowly blending it in to create a dirty effect. This is my first time using oils like this to this extent on a kit, and after finishing the kit now I can comfortably say that it is definitely my new favorite weathering technique. I absolutely love the way it looks. It looks fantastic. It looks super authentic. I love it. I can't say enough good things about it. Anyway, so what you can see me doing on screen is just dabbing that oil all around, and then we'll go ahead and blend that back in after, as you can see here. The general process for blending this stuff in is basically, well, my general process for blending this stuff in and working with the oils to this extent is basically dabbing along the panel lines like you just saw. And here now, when I'm blending it back in, I have the cap of the mineral spirit bottle filled with a little bit of clean mineral spirit on top of a paper towel. So every few seconds I will dab the paintbrush in the cap of mineral spirits and then wipe it off. That way it's just a little bit damp with mineral spirit. I'll go in with the oils and start blending it in. Then I'll dab it into the mineral spirit and wipe it off to get rid of that oil. Dab it in the mineral spirit again, wipe it off to make it damp, and then repeat the process until I get an effect that I like. And oil work is definitely a technique that every modeler should use, in my opinion, to get a really nice effect if you want an oily effect. I'm not saying you have to use it, but it's definitely a technique that can elevate your models a ton, and it does not take a lot of work, and it also doesn't cost a lot of money. This Winsor Newton bottle of the burnt umber wash, or not the burnt umber wash, sorry, the burnt umber oil work, oil paint, sorry, that I'm using here, goodness, was only about 10 bucks at my local Michael's, and this tube will last me a lifetime. So yeah, if you can try oil work, I definitely recommend doing so. It's awesome. So there, as you just saw, all of the oil was blended in on the top, and the same thing was done on the bottom. Looks very, very good. I'm extremely happy with how this came out. And now we're going to be doing a little bit more oil work. My goodness, I cannot speak in this video. Going to be doing a little bit more oil work around some certain panels. So up here, just dabbing it around, and then we'll do the same blending technique. And on the wings, I'll do a bit of streaking just to add some different effects. This panel that I'm doing here in real life wouldn't necessarily get a lot of grime and oil spillage and stuff on it, but I just thought that I would accentuate some panel lines to add another level of visual interest to the model. The streaking on the wings is very accurate to real life. A lot of Hornets and Super Hornets would have oil streaks on the wings from leaky hydraulic fluid and things like that. So here you can see I dabbed the oil onto the spot where I wanted it to be leaking. And here you can see I'm pulling it back with a brush. I decided after this that I was going to get rid of that and try again without a brush, because I found that the brush just didn't look very good. It didn't look like an authentic streak of the wind pulling the material, or the oil back. So what I decided to do was use paper towel. I'll hold the paper towel a little bit in front of the oil, and then I'll just pull it back, and it creates a lot better of an effect, as you can see here. Just getting all these little blotches of oil pulled back now. I do go back and rub them down a little bit more just so that they're not as prominent, because the oil streaks in real life wouldn't be as prominent. So all I'm doing here now is just using the paper towel to get a little bit more of that oil off to make it look a little bit less punchy. You can see close to the center of the fuselage that really big streak there in the wing. I eventually go back over that with white spirit, or mineral spirit, sorry, and kind of get rid of it and make it a bit smaller, just because it felt a little bit out of scale. But there you go, that's kind of the general gist of how I went about doing the streaking. With the streaking done, that concludes our weathering. We can now move on to putting some sub-assemblies on the aircraft. Here you can see me putting the landing gear in place. A little bit of super glue was needed to hold them in place just to make sure that they weren't going to buckle on me, but the Super Hornets have very, very beefy landing gear, so I wasn't too worried about it. Here you can see me getting the nose gear cemented in place. It needs to twist a little bit because there's a little bit of a triangle piece on the forward part of the strut. That won't go in unless it's twisted. You would have seen that there in the video. Here I am cementing the weapons pylons in place. These were weathered up with that wash that I used initially earlier. So for the first time in a long time now, we're thankfully moving back onto some sub-assemblies. I've been doing a lot of weathering and painting, so I'm happy to move back onto some sub-assemblies. Here you can see me building up the Mark 83 unguided bombs. These are pretty straightforward. Most bombs are built up these days like this. So the bombs were painted up off camera. If you'd like to see how I paint my bombs, go ahead and check out my Spitfire F Mark 18 video. I go a little bit more in depth to it, with it there. Here you can see me painting up the burner cannons now. So what I'm doing is initially black basing a light brown over the hot section of the little bit of the panels there, and then I'm going to go back in with a uniform coating of a dark earth color. It's the Vallejo Model Air Dark Earth, and blending it all in. Pretty straightforward process. Here I am putting the weapons in place. The loadout is going to be 4 Mark 83 1,000 pound unguided bombs, 2 AIM-120Cs, and 2 AIM-9Xs. You'll notice on the other side of the aircraft, on the shoulder of the intake, the targeting pod is there, and that's because originally I was going to put the JDAMs on, which require the targeting pod, but then I decided to steal the other 2 Mark 83s from the failed attempt at this kit earlier this week and plop them on this one. But with that being said, that concludes this build. If you've watched this far into the video, thank you very, very much for watching. It's greatly appreciated. Really hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had an absolute blast putting it together from start to finish. It was just a fantastic build. But anyway, without further ado, enjoy the final photos, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.